who is currently slated to be the shortstop for the Dodgers, if he ultimately can't end up handling shortstop for whatever reason, Miguel Rojas makes the most sense to step in and become an everyday shortstop, the way the roster is currently presented. Now, obviously, if the Dodgers went out and got another outfielder or a center fielder specifically, then Tommy Edman makes sense to play, any of those two mid-infield spots. And maybe that makes Rojas a little bit less of a need on this team. But as of the way it currently stands, I still think he fills a role better than any of these other three. The other positive is he has become a de facto leader in the clubhouse, and for whatever that may mean, 2 years ago him and Hayward were a little bit of the leaders, and started the new traditions and taking shots after series wins and making sure to celebrate accomplishments throughout the season. Ultimately, that didn't end well in 2023. It didn't mean much because the Dodgers lost in the first round. Rojas took on a bigger role on the field last year and continued to have his off the field role, not only as a mentor and as a veteran, but also helping Mookie Betts try to learn shortstop. I mean, he was out there with Mookie every single day before the game, going ground balls, taking questions from Mookie, showing him different angles, showing him different ways to attack, whatever it was. Mookie was very gracious in what he said about Miguel Rojas throughout the year. And, it was obvious to those, who get to go a little bit earlier and see the Dodgers warm up, that Miguel Rojas was a big part of that. So, those are the pros when it comes to Rojas in the sense of defensive value, veteran presence, if you believe in that. And, he's settled in well into this clubhouse and knows his role. Like, he knows that he could be the everyday shortstop. He knows he could play once a week. He knows he might, pinch hit one time in a span of a few games, and you're not going to hear anything from him. He's, very, very, glad to be here. He always says the right things, and he fits this Dodger roster well currently, on and off the field. And I think that's where, the value comes for Rojas. Now, when it comes to why Rojas shouldn't be on the team, I mean, it's one of those where some people have a bad taste but from a Rojas or bad memories from that one play against the Padres where he tried to take it himself to turn two and didn't get that at second, didn't get that at first, and that leaves a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. I don't think that should really affect his standing on the 2025 team, but I think what can affect it is, one, he has value. He was very, very good offensively last year compared to years past. He's obviously very good defensively. He's on a, not that expensive of a deal. He has trade value. So if there's something the Dodgers can get of any value, or at least, a flyer on some prospect that's 18, 19 years old or something like that, Miguel Rojas can probably bring you that. The one thing with when your value is so high, especially at the age that he's at, is that your value can go down and very quickly. And if the Dodgers trade him at the peak of his value, then they come out good on that deal that they made and on the option that they added and picked up before the season coming up. I think that's probably the biggest reason why Rojas shouldn't be on the roster. You can talk about the fact that he may be due for some regression. Like, if you don't believe the offensive output last year was something that he can keep up, then that may be a reason to get rid of him at the value that he has now, and that would make sense. But to me, ultimately, that gets offset by his value is defensively. You're not bringing him on to be an offensive threat. You're hoping that he can provide something on offense, but he's there to provide you top tier defense at 3 infield positions, and that's what he can do. And if you do think that last year was flukish or whatever in terms of the offense, I mean, it's hard not to say that might be true. He had a 111 WRSC plus after only breaking 100 once ever in his career, which was in 2020 when he had a 140. So, that year was, but he cut his strikeout rate to the lowest he's had it in his career. He upped his walk rate, not to any levels that he hasn't previously reached, but he upped the walk rate a little bit from the past 2 seasons. He got his, like I said, strikeout percentage down to lowest his career, and he was relatively healthy for the majority of the season. Till the end of the season, he just couldn't keep up. But I think Rojas serves this roster well, but again, that also means that he can serve someone else's roster well based on the value that he brings. We're going to talk about James Outman next, and the pros and cons of keeping James Outman around on the roster. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is here for, I don't want to pinhole it into just millennials, but I am a millennial, and we are online a lot, and we are ones that maybe are at an age where you have a little bit more spare cash, and you maybe aren't keeping in quite the eye on your finances that you normally do. And Rocket Money can help you, because if you have subscriptions that you're paying for that you, 1, don't remember, 2, don't feel like canceling or going through the hassle of canceling, 3, whatever else the reason is, Rocket Money can help you out. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. They have over 5 million users and have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Again, I am someone who does sign up for free trials or signs up for whatever, and maybe doesn't follow up all the time on canceling, or doesn't remember, or doesn't notice. $5 a month doesn't sound like a lot in the moment, but when you times that by 12 months, that's $60, and that's maybe a ticket to a Dodger game, or a few beers, or a couple hot dogs, or whatever it is. And Rocket Money can help you with all that. And if you are someone that doesn't have subscriptions, they still can help you out, because they have a goals feature that can help you set aside money for your future with no more stressing. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day, or your last listen, or your second listen, or your third listen, whatever it is. We appreciate you. This may be your first listen of the day because we didn't go live, and it is being released, into the early morning. And if not, it might be your second listen of the day. Whatever it is, we appreciate you, those of you who listen. And if you're on YouTube watching right now, you can go check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, so let's continue the talk on potential trade candidates to help the Dodgers free up some roster space. Talked about Miguel Rojas, and of the 3 of Miguel Rojas, James Outman, Chris Taylor, Miguel Rojas, to me, currently makes the most sense to be on the roster. James Outman, to me, might make the next most sense of being on the roster. It's very close between him and Chris Taylor, but obviously what Outman brings is a lot different than what Chris Taylor brings. James Outman is an outfielder. He only plays outfield. I'm sure he could learn first base, but the Dodgers don't really have a need at first base. So James Outman is an outfielder, and he has a few pros, has a few cons. Let's start off with the positive, and the positive is James Outman can play center field, and the Dodgers don't have too many straight center fielders currently on the roster or even in the pipeline. And Tommy Edman, as of right now, seems to be penciled in as the center fielder, which makes sense. But again, with some of the roster stuff that could happen, or with some of the movement that could happen based on different things, Edman could be needed in the middle of the infield, and then the Dodgers would be without a true center fielder. Andy Pages, who played center field a lot last season, Went through some growing pains out there. Is probably better suited for a corner outfield. But hey, could be working on his outfield skills this offseason and could come in as somebody that could play center field for the Dodgers last year. But I think Outman being a more of a true center fielder brings his value in that way. And it's not just defensively. It's just being able to say, hey, I'm a center fielder. Now, when it comes to any other pros, it's a little bit more based on projections and hope, and I guess that's the biggest part. You're hoping that James Outman can and would be better than he was last season. And last season, he was bad in pretty much all facets. I mean, he only played in 53 games, which is still a decent amount. 156 plate appearances. He hit 147. He had a slugging percentage of 265. His WRC plus was 54. He didn't bring any value. He brought negative value when it comes to the offensive side of the game. And when you look at the numbers and why that was, the biggest one, obviously, that stands out right away is strikeout percentage. And James Outman was a guy that was known to be a strikeout guy. Even in the minor leagues, was still a strikeout guy. However, in his rookie season, he was able to overcome, almost a 32% strikeout rate to, be really good offensively. I mean, he had a WRC plus of 118. He, had a walk rate of 12%. He had 23 homers. He got on base at a decent clip, 353, and, ultimately was a 4-win player as a rookie in 2023. Now that's the pro, like that ideal situation of what James Outman was in 2023 is the biggest pro. That's what he can be. When you look at what he could be also is a guy that strikes out 35% of the time and doesn't give you much else beyond that. Not even enough stolen bases, and really the only value that came was defensively in the fact that he can play center field. And I think with Outman, you think of him as a rookie a couple years ago, you think, okay, well, maybe one pro would be age, but he doesn't necessarily have age on his side. He is 27, and that's not old by any means. That, he should be coming into his prime. Theoretically, the prime years used to be like 28 to 31. So he would be coming into that prime. So that it's very possible, and that's where the hope comes in. Like a lot of the pros for James Outman come with that hope. And you look at the projections for James Outman, and obviously it's right here on Fangraphs, that projection for 2025, they only have him projected to be playing in 21 games. So they don't expect him to be up in the majors, and they expect him to be about league average offensively. And that would be huge because last season he was significantly under average value when it comes to offense. But I think with Outman, the other pro that he does have that Miguel Rojas and Chris Taylor don't have is he has one more option. And that obviously with the Dodgers and the way they move guys up and down and all around is pretty big and pretty clutch. And being able to have a guy that can move up, move down, you don't necessarily need a 40-man roster spot at the moment. So the 26-man roster spot may be more important. And I think, that's where having an option makes you valuable. But for me, I think when it comes to James Outman, while he may provide more value right now than maybe Chris Taylor does, depending how you feel, or even more than Miguel Rojas, depending how you feel, I do think he can serve, even with coming off the season that he had last year. I still think, a 27-year-old center fielder who was a four-win player in 2023 can get you something on the open market, whether it's, as part of a package or whether, like I said, one of those flyer candidate guys that the Dodgers can, someone they like that's 18 or 19 that they don't know, the other team may not know much about. The Dodgers may have some research there. But I think Outman provides you that value. Maybe not more than Miguel Rojas in the sense of if a team's looking for somebody to help them in 2025, I think it's Miguel Rojas is a little bit of a safer bet. But if it's someone that's looking for upside or a gamble or, somebody to play outfield specifically, then James Outman does make a lot of sense. And I think that's where, some more value of his comes. But while, again, it's nothing imminent, I don't think anything's imminent because the Dodgers don't need a roster spot at the moment. They do have one 40-man roster spot open, and by the time they get around to the way of getting their 26-man roster, there could be a completely different team, or at least a completely different dynamic on the roster than there is now. But I think for Outman, the fact that he can play center field and the fact of what is at least a ceiling could be is his biggest asset to the team. But again, we've seen both sides of it with Outman. We've seen, I would imagine, hopefully rock bottom for him, and it's not good. And, I don't think playing a decent defensive center field makes up for that. So James Outman, currently on the roster, I think he remains there, but I think if the Dodgers do make a move to solidify either shortstop, second base, or center field, then James Outman could find himself on the way out. And I don't know if it would be as extreme as DFA like Diego Cartaya, or it would simply just come via trade. I mean, the Dodgers have seen a lot of guys go on and have relative success in other places, and it hasn't cost them too much. And I think that's kind of where we're at with James Outman. So the last one to talk about is Chris Taylor. And, it's definitely one that is maybe a little bit polarizing, but we're going to get into it. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time app is here to help you get to all the live events you need or want to go to, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Game Time can help you out. You can make plenty of memories using Game Time. I know there's plenty of live events I've gone to using Game Time, and would really appreciate the way they help you out. And they've added a new feature to help you out even more, which is called Game Time Picks, and it helps you get your tickets even easier because it filters out the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks, they can help you find, if you're looking for something to do in January, maybe you want to go see a comedy show, or maybe you want to go see an NFL playoff game or an NBA game. Well, Game Time Picks can help you out right there because they got filter out the fluff. You want good seats. You want to sit in a great section for decent prices, and that's what Game Time can do to help you out. And they have these super deals, which are pretty impressive in terms of what you get and where you're sitting. So make sure to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Well, thank you for being an everyday, or if you are one, an everyday, or just someone that listens or watches every day. We appreciate all of you that have committed yourselves to watching or listening to 5 weekly episodes. And if you're not quite there yet, we would ask that you up your intake at least one episode. From 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and 4 to 5. And, hopefully you continue to keep on moving up and making that commitment to being everydayer. We appreciate it if you would. We appreciate it if you would subscribe. Some of you are everydayers, but you maybe don't subscribe because you're going to go listen to our episode every morning. But, subscribing definitely helps out, gets those numbers up. It makes it look clean so other people can see and be like, oh, there's this many people subscribed. Let me subscribe as well. And you can always go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us, keeping you up to date with the Dodgers and Dodger-related things. And get an invite to our Discord channel where you can talk Dodgers all day with other Dodger fans. So go joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Okay, let's finish up talking about Chris Taylor and pros and cons for Chris Taylor. And, I said with James Outman that some of the pros come with hope. And, realistically with Chris Taylor, a lot of that happens to be the same here. You're hoping that he can find some previous value that he had to the Dodgers. Because again, last year, even if you break down the numbers, and yes, he got better in the second half of the season, but you look at the overall season, and he was significantly below average in terms of offense, and even some of the defensive numbers don't favor him particularly well. And you look at why, and it's hard to say there's a specific reason, because while his strikeout rate was 30%, almost 31%, that was the lowest of his last 3 seasons. So he did improve in that mark. He did improve in his walk percentage, and that's really it. Obviously he had the horrific start to the season where we weren't sure if he was going to last through the entire season. Then picked it up a little bit, got hurt, and then came back second half of the season where you weren't sure where he fit in and if he was going to fit in. And the Dodgers ultimately, because of other injuries and everything else, he was able to remain on the roster. He was on postseason rosters, but didn't really contribute too much. He was on third base for Freddie's walk-off, if I'm not mistaken. But beyond that, didn't really have a signature moment in the postseason like pretty much everyone else on the team did. And, when it comes to Chris Taylor, you're hoping that he can find 2021 Chris Taylor, 2017 Chris Taylor. But realistically, he's getting older. He's going to turning 35 toward the end of the season. And realistically, you're not always going to find the fountain of youth, and it's not something that you can count on. And with Chris Taylor, I think the biggest, pro is he can play a lot of positions, and he can play infield and outfield. The things with Miguel Rojas, he can play infield but not outfield. James Outman can play outfield but not infield. Chris Taylor can do it all. He can play second, he can play short, he can play third, he can play left, he can play center, he can play right if you need him. He can play everything, and that's the biggest pro that he has. And really, I would imagine the not the only reason, but the main reason he's remained on the roster. I think, with that comes his contract, and obviously he's making, more money than a lot of other players that are, better than him, and it may be hard to let that go for the Dodgers and just count it as a sunk cost. And not, realistically, it's not enough to say the Dodgers won't just